Good afternoon. My name is Schmid. I'm the Managing Director for Asia Pacific for Coolsculpting by Allegan, and I'm really pleased to be here with you here at VLCC Center to talk to you about a subject which I guess everybody has some interest about. It's actually, we're going to talk about fat. Now, fat not in terms of food, butter or anything like that, but body fat per se. And I think everybody here, whoever listens into it, is concerned about some pockets of fat somewhere on the body. And in this forum I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what we can do and what Coolsculpting actually could do for you in order to get the body shape which you want, or get rid of some pockets of fat which you don't really want to have. Now let me first talk to you a little bit about what Coolsculpting is, where it comes from. Coolsculpting actually has been invented in the United States. It has patents and research papers actually coming from the Harvard Medical School. The inventors basically are two doctors, Dr. Rox Anderson and also Dieter Manstein. They're actually quite famous in the aesthetic industry. Now, these two have reviewed a few papers, or rather medical reports, which come from the 70s and 80s, where it was reported that children who were sucking on popsicles, they actually lost some fat in their cheeks. And then another medical report was women riding on horses in the cold lost permanently fat in the outer thighs. So these two very smart gentlemen came together and said, like, well, is there actually a relationship between cold and killing or diminishing fat cells then? And they came up with a study where they proved the concept that really by using cold rather than heat, which is quite common actually now in the aesthetic industry, but by using cold, by freezing fat cells, we can induce fat cell death. Now, let me talk to you a bit about fat cells and us. Fat cells are actually like balloons. And if you reach puberty, or by the time when you reach puberty, the number of fat cells in our body stays virtually the same. It doesn't change, it doesn't increase, it doesn't decrease. The only thing which increases and decreases is basically the volume of the fat cells itself. Again, as I said, they're like balloons, so if the body has to store more fat, the fat cells expand, and then also we become rounder. We have these pockets of fat which we don't feel are aesthetically so pleasing. When you go on a diet, the fat cells contract, and therefore you will have lesser bulges and unsightly shapes where you don't necessarily want to have them. Now, there are basically two ways which we can use in order to get rid of fat cells permanently, meaning to kill them or take them out of the body. One which I'm sure you all have heard about is liposuction. Now, liposuction is invasive. What does that mean? When we talk about invasive procedures, that means it penetrates the skin, you have to cut, you have to be under anesthesia, it's an operation, a surgery, which many people feel like, I don't have the time. Maybe also you're afraid of needles, of knives, or anything like that. So even though this is a proven methodology of getting rid of fat cells, the other methodology which I'm talking to you about is cryolipolysis, or freezing the fat cell. Now, freezing the fat, or freezing away the fat, is a non-invasive procedure. That means there are no knives, there are no needles, there are no cuts, there are no surgeries, there's no anesthesia or anything like that. You basically can come in to to clinics, to like VLCC, and you can be treated right there and then. You don't have to be in a sterile situation or anything like that. But at the end of the day, you can walk out of the treatment room and you can continue your life like nothing has happened. Now, when I talk to you about Coolsculpting, let me explain that a little bit, how that basically works. So when you look at the Coolsculpting machine, they all have different applicators. Now these applicators, they look like cups. And these cups are connected to a suction device. Now, when you have some fat on your body, which you can grab with your hands, all right, you can actually also suck them into the applicator. And by the vacuum, the fat is being held in the applicator. Now, maybe as a child you have been playing with a Hoover, and you put the Hoover right here at the cheek, and it was sucked inside. So this is basically the same way the applicator holds the tissue in place then. So once the tissue is in place, there are two cooling plates which then cool down the fat to a level that the fat cells freeze. Now, mind you, the important part here which you have to remember is that it's safe, but also it only targets the fat cells. Why is that so? Now, fat freezes actually at a higher temperature than water. Now, if we were to go down to the degrees where water is frozen, then also there's a chance that you might be damaging skin tissue, muscle tissue, nerves, and so on and so forth, which mainly contain fat. Which mainly contain water. Now, the fat cells, of course, as the name says, contain mainly fat, and fat freezes around 4 degrees centigrade. You can see that you can do a very simple experiment basically at home. You take a glass of water, you have butter, you keep it outside in the summer heat of Delhi here, and you will see that the water, of course, gets warm, and the butter then just becomes liquid. You take both of them, you put them back into the fridge then, and you will see that the water, when you take it out after 2-3 hours, is actually still water. It doesn't freeze. But the butter has become hard, so basically it froze at the temperature of the freezer, which is around 2 to 4 degrees here. So we do the very same thing when we pull it into the applicator. We lower the temperature to about 4 degrees, and the fat in the fat cells freezes. Now, when a cell or the content of a cell freezes, the cell becomes non-viable, meaning that it's going to die. So by pulling the fat cells or the fatty tissue into the cup, and then you freeze it down to 4 degrees, these fat cells then are programmed to die. We call this in science apoptosis, or natural cell death. So after the treatment, about 25% of the fat cells which were captured in the applicator will be dying through apoptosis, or as I said, natural cell death. So over the period of about 2 to 3 months, these fat cells which are dying are being taken out of the tissue. They're being excreted then through the lymphatic pathway, and at that very part which was treated, you will have a lower number of fat cells, and therefore also the shape of the body will be slimmer or lesser than. So this is where we actually can contour the body at specific areas. Now, I want to talk to you about why this is important. Now, you will say, look, I don't want to undergo any aesthetic treatment or anything like that, because I feel it's unnatural. I don't want to do anything unnatural. I'd rather go for diet and exercise. And many of you, I guess, who are listening to this here have tried diet and exercise as well, me included, because before I thought like, well, if I diet and exercise, I will get a perfect body shape, I will get a six-pack, and so on and so forth. Now, I have been eating fish soup, for example. That's what I do, with low fat and very few carbohydrates and stuff like that for a long period of time. And if you always eat the same kind of like boring diet, I go to gym as well, and you feel like, yeah, sooner or later I'm going to be just looking perfect. But it never happened. What happened to me, though, is that I was losing fat at places where I didn't want to have fat. I lost, for example, fat in the cheek, so I was looking a bit like this here. That didn't look very good, but the fat which I really wanted to lose, the ones around the abdomen, that never went. That's what we actually call stubborn fat. So even if I would be dieting and exercising and be very, very strict about it, at the end of the day, I didn't have the body which I wanted to have. I lost fat, yes, I lost body fat per se, but I didn't lose it exactly at the places I wanted to have. Now, with Coolsculpting, the beauty about it is that you can target exactly the areas where you want to kill or eliminate the fat cells. So for me, again, as I mentioned to you, I would like to get rid of my the fat around my abdomen. So I'm going into a clinic which has Coolsculpting, and they can place the applicator exactly at the fat or at the place which I want to have lesser fat than. They use this, they suck it into the applicator, they freeze the fat. After 3 months or so, about 25% of the fat, as I mentioned to you before, will be eliminated. And I can repeat that. That's the beauty about it as well. If I'm still not satisfied, I could go in again and repeat the treatment until I feel actually satisfied with the body shape I have. So for me, when I first heard about Coolsculpting, I said like, that sounds almost too good to be true. Now, I have been working in the aesthetic and medical industry for quite a long period of time. And so my first question to the person who introduced me to Coolsculpting was, well, is it safe? Is it really, can you prove that? And they explained to me that Coolsculpting by Allergan has over 70 published papers, medical papers and research. The company itself has spent over 10 years researching the procedure. So again, that it is safe because everybody wants to have a safe treatment, but also that it works. When you're spending money on Coolsculpting, you of course want to make sure that you have an outcome as well. So medically, this technology is proven. It works. You have excellent papers actually also to prove that there's no impact on the rest of the body or anything like that. So again, it's almost too good to be true, but if you want to really see how it looks like and how it could work, I invite you to come to some VLCC centers where we have Coolsculpting by Allergan installed. And in these centers, there are people who we have trained very well who could come in and then assess you and work together with you to develop a personalized treatment plan. Everybody is different. Everybody has also different ideas about how they should look like, what is beauty and so on and so forth. Again, you know, for me it was my abdomen. But other person might say, look, I'm not very happy about my double chin. I don't have one yet. But if you have a double chin, if you're not happy about it, we could then assess this area then and treat that. Other areas which you can treat with Coolsculpting are, for example, the arms, or the inner thighs, the outer thighs. Bra fat, for example, for women might be something which you could be concerned about. So there are multiple areas which you actually can assess. So if you have a question about it, or if you have an area of concern, please feel free to just step into VLCC, talk to somebody who has been trained, get an assessment, and work together with them to get a personalized treatment plan. So that's basically the good news about Coolsculpting and what you can do with it. Now, I have received, during our conversation here, a few questions here from viewers which I would like to read through with you and answer if possible, if the time permits. So I've got here a first question from Sudhir. He's actually from Hyderabad, he tells us. He says, I'm interested in Coolsculpting, but I do not wish to go for surgeries or anesthesia. Should I be concerned? Well, the good news is, as I mentioned, Coolsculpting is a non-invasive procedure. So Coolsculpting does not require anesthesia or surgery. So if you want to get your body shaped, if you want to sculpt your body, if you want to get rid of specific pockets of fat, you go ahead and try out Coolsculpting, and I think you'll be surprised what it can do for you. Then Preeti from Mumbai, she's writing to us and she says, I'm 35 years of age. Am I a good candidate for this? This is a very good question. Age. Now, as I mentioned to you before, the number of fat cells which a person has is basically stabilized by puberty, by about 17, 18 years of age. So after that, anybody up to 70, 80 years old, doesn't matter, could actually benefit of Coolsculpting. Before you finish puberty, because the fat cells regrow, you're basically just wasting your money. So wait until you're 17, 18, and then if you find out that you would like to use Coolsculpting or try Coolsculpting, go ahead with that. Then, let's see, Rahul from Bangalore, he's telling me, what is the difference between stubborn fat and normal fat? Good question again here as well. Now, let me tell you a bit more about fat. We have basically two types of fat in our body. One is visceral, which we call inside the body fat, and the other one is outside fat, or fat which you can basically pinch. Now, visceral fat, which is inside, or we can call it also beer belly, there's nothing we can do about it. Not even liposuction could actually alleviate that. The only way you could get rid of visceral fat, which lines the organ inside, which also then makes your tummy to stick out and is very hard, the only way you can get rid of it is diet and exercise. So, sorry, you might not get around diet and exercise at the end anyway. But any fat which you can grab outside, that can be treated by Coolsculpting. Again, even if you do diet and exercise, there might be some pockets of fat which just don't disappear, as I told you before, in my own experience here. So that's what this is what we call stubborn fat. Especially for stubborn fat, if you're a gym rat, as we call it, that might be an option for you to get this perfect body here. Okay, Then we have Shreya. Shreya is from Delhi, and she says, is this in any way a painful procedure, and how exactly does it feel? Also, good question, but a little bit difficult to treat. Now, pain in general is a very subjective feeling. What I feel as pain, you might feel as nothing, just like a mosquito bite or something like that. So if I say it's pain-free, you might later on come back to me and says, no, that's actually not true. So different people, again, have different thresholds. But what I can tell you from our research is that about 85 to 90% of people who have undergone Coolsculpting would recommend it to their family and friends as being a tolerable and comfortable procedure. Okay? So again, I cannot tell you that it's pain-free, but it's certainly tolerable. When you start the treatment itself first, when you put the applicator on it, remember there's a vacuum which sucks the fat into it and holds it tight there. So it will feel a bit of a tugging and pulling at first. But then we're cooling it down, so after about 5 to 7 minutes, you basically lose the feeling there. And most people I have seen, they watch movies, they play on their iPhone, they answer emails and so on and so forth. If you would be in pain, you would not be able to do this actually, okay? So again, most people enjoy the treatment and feel like that it's very well tolerable. Okay, let me skip down here to Hadi. Hadi is from Calcutta, okay, a place I'd like to visit once. What is the duration of the procedure and when will the results be visible? After how long can I get back to my routine again? Okay, Hadi. Now, the duration of the procedure is 60 minutes, meaning each section which you treat is a 60-minute procedure there. If you do 2 sections, then it will be 120 minutes. I mean, simple math here. And when are the results visible? Remember, I talked about that before, that the fat cells, once they die, they will be eliminated from the area which was treated over about a period of 90 days or 3 months. So you will see the best results after 3 months. However, some people have reported that they see results after 3 or 4 weeks already. But again, you know, it's a process which continues on, and you will then see again the best results after 3 to 4 months. And last one, Sumi here, I like that question as well because my wife was asking this as well. Not that she has delivered a baby in the last 6 months, but Sumi said, I have delivered a baby 6 months back and have very loose and sagging tummy. Can I take Coolsculpting? Now, mind you, when the fat is being pulled in, if you don't put in fat, it's not going to be treated. So if you have a lot of lax skin, and by sucking it in, only skin is in there, we will not be able to treat your fat. So in order to find out whether you're a good candidate, again I invite you to come to a VLCC clinic, work with one of the consultants there, and see whether you are a good candidate or whether your skin is too lax and you will not be able to pull in enough fat to actually get a good result. Alright, I think my time is just about up here, and so and also I think I came to the end of the interesting questions here. I appreciate your time, hope it was informative for you, and hope to see you next time. Thank you, have a good weekend.